Welcome to Perimenopause with Dr. Lauren Ward-Sellinger, naturopathic physician and Menopause Society certified practitioner, focusing on integrative health support for perimenopause and beyond, bringing you applicable tools and information to help you on your journey. Enjoy the ride that we will share here on Perimenopause. Hello and welcome back to Perimenopause. I'm your host, Lauren Ward-Sellinger. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Bend, Oregon, where I focus on women's health, perimenopause, menopause, hormone management, and customized functional medicine. So today, I wanted to talk about my favorite support for sleep challenges. So this is a really common issue in perimenopause and into menopause, sleep disturbance. So people have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, feeling rested in the morning. Maybe they're getting up multiple times. Maybe they're waking up and not being able to fall back asleep at all, and just overall getting really short amount of rest. And this really carries over into the daytime. So people find that they have, more mood issues, more tolerance issues when they're underslept. Also, it can make it harder to get up and do your morning routine, like working out or meal prepping or just getting to work on time. And so it just kind of makes everything feel a little bit harder. And like I said, this is a really super common problem that can start in the 30s into the 40s and last all the way through their lifetime, or sometimes get better as you transition into menopause. So this can also really affect intimacy with your partner, because if sleep disturbance is an issue, you may have less of a desire. So there's just a lot of things that it carries over into. I will say that this is a very underdiagnosed perimenopause symptom, and sometimes it takes a lot of other symptoms creeping up until it's really finally recognized. But it is a very well-known symptom of true menopause, and a lot of times attributed to the hot flashes that start to occur in menopause. But in perimenopause, a lot of women are having hormonal fluctuations, but they're not so dramatic to be causing hot flashes and night sweats yet. For some people it is, but for a lot of people it isn't quite that low yet to trigger those symptoms. So it can kind of fall under the radar, and people will maybe blame it on other things. So as a naturopathic doctor, I'm always looking at all of the factors in someone's life. So diet, lifestyle, hormones, what can we work on to really try to regulate this? And so I put together my list of my kind of favorite tried and true tips. If you feel like any of this resonates with you and you want to give it a try, of course, you're welcome to do that. If you feel like you need a little bit more support, then this is a good place to maybe reach out to your provider or to me or to another naturopathic doctor. So here we go. Sleep hygiene. This is an umbrella term for let's really prioritize your sleep. You're putting effort into it. You have a routine. You're doing the same thing pretty much every day. Our body loves routine and craves it. So the more that you can be consistent with your sleep routine, the better your sleep routine will be. So going to bed and waking up at approximately the same time every day is a huge start to that. I would say within an hour of flex time. So if your normal bedtime is 9 p.m., then I would say by 10 p.m., you need to be in bed on even those kind of rare circumstances where you're going to stay up later. Obviously, there's going to be traveling, there's going to be special events, there's going to be holidays, things like that where you may stay up later. I'm talking about 90% of the time, even up to 95% of the time, really trying to stick with a very routine bedtime and wake time. Whether you're working or not, whether it's vacation or not, you're kind of just sticking with the same routine. Like I said, the body really craves routine, craves cycle. This really sets your sleep-wake rhythm very properly. And it really triggers your body to release those sleep time hormone cascades and also those wake time hormone cascades. Okay, now let's talk about the room that you're sleeping in. We want it to be dark, clean, clutter-free, maybe some white noise if you like that. I'm a huge fan. And then cool temperature. So it's got to be, you're able to wear clothing and a blanket or whatever. If it's too hot in there, it's not going to be comfortable. And then that would certainly worsen any sort of temperature changes that might be associated with perimenopause and menopause. I'll put a note there too that I think that organic fabrics for pajamas and for sheets and blankets are a huge bonus to help regulate temperature. Okay. Then saving your bedroom for intimacy and sleep only. This is, if you're having trouble sleeping, I would advise you to get your work out of your room. Don't have your workstation be in your room. Don't have your craft table be in your room. Don't have your storage, your excess backup storage be in your room. Try to get rid of all of that stuff so that your bedroom is a sanctuary. I know that's the luxury of space, and maybe you don't have space anywhere else and you have to work in your office. But if you're truly dealing with sleep disruption and sleep disturbance, then that's something to consider is like, where else can you put this? Let's get it out of the bedroom. Okay. Also, if you can do a workout at about the same time every day, this also helps. So if you're having sleep problems, maybe consider not exercising too late in the day, as it can raise your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, which is also your awake hormone, and also comes up with exercise. That can be great earlier in the day, but if you're really struggling to fall asleep and stay asleep, then it might need to, move earlier, because after 5, 6 p.m., we don't really want our cortisol going up too much. So that's sleep hygiene. Okay. Moving on to caffeine intake. So I'm a coffee lover. I always have been. I always will be. So this is not easy for me to say, but you have to get rid of the afternoon caffeine. So it's completely disrupting the cortisol and sleep rhythm. It may have worked in your 20s, maybe even into your 30s, but there does come a time where I think in a woman's hormonal life where you start to not be able to handle that disruption in your sleep-wake cycle. So afternoon caffeine, evening caffeine, some people are even as sensitive to not even be able to have dark chocolate at night because it has too much caffeine. The problem is real. So keep it to 1 to 2 cups of caffeine all before noon if you can. If you are having a midday or afternoon or early evening slump that's making you reach for sugar or caffeine, then there's something bigger going on there that I would say it's worth investigating. So maybe see a naturopath or see your regular doctor, get your thyroid checked, your iron checked, maybe consider doing some cortisol testing if you're into that. And then also blood sugar regulation. So a lot of people who are having these afternoon crashes are really actually reaching for blood sugar regulation. And so they may be eating too high of carbohydrate lunches or breakfast. And so then they're having a blood sugar spike and then a blood sugar crash, and then finding something to satisfy that in the afternoon, which a lot of people reach for sugar and caffeine. Long term, that will mess with your sleep wake rhythm. So I do not recommend it long term. Of course, here and there, again, you're traveling, you're on a long road trip, you got to just survive. Sometimes there's a place for things like this, but I'm talking about, again, the 95% of the days. If you're having that extra cup of coffee, it's time to look elsewhere. Okay, speaking of diet and blood sugar regulation, with chaotic hormone changes of perimenopause and menopause, you do actually start to see some glucose dysregulation as well. So a drop in estrogen actually is correlated with desensitization of insulin. So people who maybe have never had blood sugar dysregulation in the past, have maybe never had hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, suddenly that's entered the chat. That could be happening overnight. So what I see for a lot of women is they're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m. and they can't fall back asleep. With a lot of women, what we've ended up doing is really checking their blood sugar, maybe even doing a continuous glucose monitor. And I have found over and over that it ends up correlating with a drop in blood sugar overnight. And then the body, just being the smart body that it is, it starts to produce cortisol and produce blood sugar from the liver to stay alive. So for those people who are having this blood sugar drop and having this 2 to 4 a.m. wake up, I do recommend that they have a snack before bed, ideally a protein and or fat-rich snack that's going to last a long time while they sleep and help regulate their blood sugar overnight. For people who are actual insulin-dependent diabetics, this is a well-known phenomenon, and there are specific medications and diet recommendations for people who have insulin-dependent diabetes to get through the night without these blood sugar spikes and crashes. For someone who does not actually have diabetes, this is more of a diet and lifestyle management thing that can be very helpful for just extending that deep sleep and skipping this wake up from 2 to 4 a.m. Okay, so continuous glucose monitors, they're just a great health tool. I don't think that they're for everybody, and they are definitely 100% developed more for like insulin-dependent diabetics, and they've been such a game changer for that population. So I love them for that. But for people who are in this perimenopause phase that might want to dig a little bit deeper, You can buy continuous glucose monitors online. You can get them direct from the manufacturer. A lot of companies will give you basically a free one to try. You just need a prescription for it. So that's worth asking your provider about. But I have found it to be just like to get the nuance of what is happening overnight to be very, very helpful. So the other thing about 2 to 4 a.m., I would love to have my friend Melissa Keene come on again and talk about this a little bit more, but there is, in the Chinese medicine perspective, 2 to 4 a.m. is Chinese liver time, and that also relates to blood sugar. So just one more check in the box for that to be regulated. With Chinese medicine, the other thing that is correlated is repressed emotions. So resentment, guilt, shame, fear, some big emotions that can be trapped in the liver. And in Chinese medicine, it's such a beautiful science they have and art that they have. But I do find that again, we have this population of women who are going through a huge life transition, maybe are changing jobs or raising families or navigating marriages or all these things that happen in this midlife era. And so I do find that there's a lot of that energetic, emotional component that might be going on as well. And basically, you're told to do is to just process that. So maybe that's therapeutic writing, or seeing a counselor, or taking up kickboxing, or having difficult conversations that you've been not wanting to have, but that are sitting inside of you and need to come out. I just think that's a really cool thing to add on to that. All right, so supplements. If you are on social media, you'll probably see a bajillion supplements for sleep. I think some that really have merit. One is magnesium, specifically magnesium glycinate. It's very relaxing, really good for sleep induction, very dose dependent in its effects. And I find that some people can get away with 100 milligrams, some people need to take much more than that. And it also, bonus, has a little bit of an effect on blood sugar and insulin regulation. So that's a great one to try for especially sleep initiation. Okay, phosphatidylserine. This is one of my all-time favorites. I've taken it off and on for 15 years. Basically, it's great for cortisol dysregulation. So if you have this kind of, you're falling asleep and then waking up in the middle of the night, or you just can't turn your brain off and you can't fall asleep, that might be a sign of cortisol dysregulation and really needing some support with that. Phosphatidylserine basically tells your brain to stop making cortisol to that amount, and it can really be relaxing and make you sleep more deeply. This is great for people who are managing really stressful situations or have had long-term stress, and they associate their poor sleep with their stress. So also good for changing time zones. So for people who are traveling, maybe traveling a lot and having to readjust to a 2 or 3 hour time zone often, phosphatidylserine can really help for that. Bonus is that the long-term studies and safety data for phosphatidylserine show that it's actually preventative for age-related cognitive decline. So very cool with that one. Okay, relaxing herbs. I would be remiss not to mention the multitude of herbs that are great for sleep support. Magnolia, passion flower, kava, skullcap, chamomile. There's so many great herbs. And so this is where a naturopath would shine in helping you find an herbal solution for your sleep issues. I also, if you're here in Bend, I can't help but shout out People's Apothecary. They do an amazing job at coming up with custom formulations for people when they come in and talk to somebody there. So, and then they have, I'm sure, things right on the shelf pre-made that you can take as well. Okay, last one I'll mention for supplements is melatonin and 5-HTP, specifically together. They work really great together, especially for sleep initiation. And there's some great formulas where they're in chewable tablets that work really, really quickly. So I love that. And I use it for a lot of my patients who are just having trouble turning off their brain and falling asleep. Okay. Next category, hormones. I can't talk about sleep and perimenopause without talking about the queen herself, progesterone. So specifically oral micronized progesterone. You take it at bedtime because it's sedating, and it works great for about 9 out of 10 people. There's this one person out of the 10 that sometimes will have an opposite reaction and they get anxious from it. And so we have to figure out a different method for them. But 9 out of 10 times it's sedating. People fall asleep, they stay asleep, they feel great, and they don't feel groggy in the morning. For most perimenopausal women, it'll be recommended to take it 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So the second half of their cycle, when their progesterone is supposed to be surging and maybe isn't surging like it used to. And so, but then once people have been taking it for a while, and if fertility is not a concern, sometimes we'll This is where like the nuance of seeing a provider who does this all the time can be very helpful. So, and sometimes we can increase the dosage too if there's not enough of a sedation effect. Progesterone can be used on its own. You don't have to be on any other hormone therapy to use progesterone. It's one that I use very often first for women in perimenopause because it's a gentle intro into that world. And those signs of low progesterone are often one of the first things to show up in perimenopause, where maybe the low estrogen symptoms aren't quite showing up yet. Once someone is on estrogen, I usually do have them on progesterone as well. And that's whether they are perimenopausal, fully postmenopausal, whether they have a uterus or not. I will usually have some sort of progesterone on board just because I think it makes people feel better. And there's a lot of information on that in some of my other podcasts. And also, it's something I'm very passionate about because when I see women from a functional medicine standpoint, they do best if they have both on board. So once they get to a low estrogen phase of life. Earlier in the perimenopause phase, sometimes progesterone alone is enough. I think that sums it up for my sleep support. I hope you found some of this valuable. If you could forward this to anybody in your life that's having sleep difficulty, that would be awesome. And if you want to talk more directly to me, you can go to my website, wildflowernaturalmedicine.com. And I do have a online schedule, and I see patients both in Oregon and remotely. If I am seeing you outside of the state of Oregon, I cannot prescribe medications. I'm more of a health consultant, but I can help you figure out a good plan, which you can take back to your primary care physician locally. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.